You are listening to the Spent the Rent podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
Hello, I am Patty Rose. This is episode number 217. My guest today is Thomas Hiura. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Welcome to you having me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have never met before. This is really cool. This is the 11th time you've been a guest, something like that. But this is our first. No, this is really cool. I asked you a couple days ago if you'd like to come on, and you said, hey, that's what we do. We do election recaps. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk. Even though it seems like no one cares, we care. And so I like to record these because it kind of documents where our mind was at that time. Totally. And I like to look back at them later and realize that nothing ever changes. So thank you so much for being here. Before we get started on the local coverage, you know that the show is primarily about the Eugene and Springfield area. Of course, I don't think that it would be possible for me to do a podcast and not mention 34 felony convictions. Thomas, I want to hear your input on former President Donald J. Trump being convicted on 34 charges. Now, he will be facing an appeal. I'm sure immediately he's going to try to complain about it being a rigged trial, jurors and the judge and all that being corrupt. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, last night I was on stage at the Big Dirty rapping, and one of my songs has a lyric where I say, do wrong, got to be held accountable. And I was referring to a artist I knew who plagiarized in that lyric, but it very much applies in this instance too. Yeah. It seems to me that there's really an abundance of crimes when it comes to that dude flooding the zone. Some people talk about the left having quote unquote Trump derangement syndrome, like getting too riled up about every single thing he does. I got like exhaustion syndrome.
I was thinking about that yesterday that like, there's two things going on. You've got the people that are on point, think he's guilty of everything basically, or whatever. And those people are inundated and fatigued with how much they're seeing. So sometimes the depth of what he's doing or has done in the past or been accused of and now found guilty, sometimes you can almost get to a point where you're like, well, that's not even that big of a deal. I've heard people say like these aren't even that big of charges. I'm like, no, they're felonies. They're felony charges. I
mean, if you are willing to be so brazen in your forging and tampering with financial documents and misreporting, which seems to be, a common thread throughout a lot of his behavior, just if there's solid enough evidence for it to be a conviction, and then every single case, every single charge is convicted, there's a jury member who got all their news from Truth Social. So people thought that there would at least be some kind of hung jury situation, but no, it's very clear on his face that he did, illegal actions in this case. And so,
well, and the evidence supports it. And I mean, I have a hard time with people that are like, well, don't all of them do this? Because I think that we can look at maybe an Andrew Cuomo, for example, where for the Democratic Party and how it's not a false equivalence, where an Andrew Cuomo situation, and I think he wasn't even, I could be wrong, but I'm not positive that he was even accused of a crime other than maybe like a sexual harassment type, not felony charges, definitely. And
yeah, and then I don't know if it's crime to be basically lying to the public about there was a certain number of people, the retarees who. And
it should be. I mean, essentially, that's my point is what I was going to get to.
Politicians lie to us just every single day.
And that's not something that we should accept. We should have a higher standard. Mm-hmm. People talk about how they found this Stormy Daniels hush money, whatever. It's been called a lot of different things, but how the New York Attorney General's office found this was the part that a lot of people have a hard time with, because they're like, well, they were not even looking for that. They were looking for other stuff. He was lying on his financial records in another situation, and they found this. So that's not really what it is. My thing is that I thought that in order to become president, you had to be thoroughly vetted in a way that we should be, they're not sending their top brass. We'll just put it that way. They're sending their rapists and their 34-time convicted felons. That's who they're sending to the White House currently from the right Republican side. So to take a tone from his conversation about, immigrants. I don't want to talk too much about Trump. I just think it's wild. We've talked about impeachment in the past. We've talked about just so much stuff with him. And it seems that he is Teflon Don. Nothing ever seems to come of it. So we'll see if this is different. It's going to be really interesting. At least the last couple of days, there has been some actual news to watch,
Did you see the Biden clip lately where he's walking away from the podium and somebody asks him about the Trump situation and he just turns and he just smiles and doesn't say anything?
No.
It was kind of funny.
No, and I mean, I don't want to argue with people on Facebook, but I made a comment basically like, hey, if you are still supporting this guy, I don't think you can get to call yourself a patriot because you obviously don't care about the way that the country is ran with laws. But I had a friend, she's a really awesome person, but she chimed in on it and was like, nothing will ever convince me to support the brain dead lunatic. And I'm like, I don't know if you have a side by side, Biden and Trump. Biden is a much more articulate person. That is such a stupid argument. Yes, he's old. They're both old. But as far as completing full sentences, I mean, it's not even close. Trump is such a broken communicator. I mean, he's effective, sure, with his base, but it's not even close. I mean, I think that it's good that they're going to be debating as much as I think that we've already seen it. And I think that our minds are made up. So maybe it's unnecessary. What do you think?
I mean, I can understand why somebody would think that Trump's extemporaneous style of speaking demonstrates poise and an idea of confidence. However, I think message discipline is something that, frankly, Biden, as a decades and decades long politician, understands. And so he doesn't kind of go off on those kinds of tangents. He's pretty good at pounding the same message that his party and his agenda want. And most of the time, I think that's, good. I think that a lot of these leaders in politics are they're rhetoricians, more than they are kind of nerds who do the policy work. So, it's like, you got to find somebody who can walk that balance, be charismatic, and also have a deep depth of policy commitment as well. And so, I have some optimism that this country can elect people that are, stewards of the values of everyday people, and that can find those common threads that unite a seemingly increasingly polarized world. But I think we have to take money out. I think we got to be able to nominate and vote for people. I voted for star voting in this election because I thought it would be a strong paradigm that would change the way that we look at how empowered our vote is. Yeah,
and that'll segue us nicely into local stuff. The local election, the biggest disappointment for me was that star voting was unsuccessful. We're going to talk about a lot of different stuff, but let's start with that. Star voting, the acronym, I've talked about it on this podcast ad nauseum. The acronym for STAR is score, then automatic runoff. And so each round, if say you have 5 candidates, each round, the bottom candidate is eliminated. And then you've scored each person 0 through 5. So if your person is the person with your highest number is eliminated in the next round, you're in the final round, the person that you scored the highest will get your full vote. So it allows you to use more of a effective technique to show favoritism towards certain candidates, not just one. And I noticed that the top brass in the Lane County area was speaking out in the Democratic Party, was speaking out pretty adamantly against it. And that makes sense because it affects and it goes after party politics.
They have a way that they want to calculate a win number.
Yeah.
They have a way they want to win a race. And they've successfully done it in so many instances.
Yeah.
Of course, there's instances where you have maybe a more rural district like West Lane, and you had Don Leslie versus Ryan Seneca. That was kind of close, but didn't go their favor. They have these ways they want to continue to win elections, and I can understand why.
Sure.
But for me, one of the things that I find disappointing, we had a low turnout May primary.
Yeah.
Probably because from on high, our candidates are the rematch of our last presidential election,
Sure.
and nobody is really that enthused about it. At least, certainly not more than they were then.
Yeah.
So I think that with you have star voting, you have all the elections, in one round for that year in November, and people know that an election is happening. You're going to have a higher turnout, and hopefully you're going to have greater engagement in what the candidates actually stand for and what the ballot measures are.
Yeah, but it wasn't chosen. It was voted against pretty strong.
About
60%
same
no.
As about the same as the stadium.
As the stadium, we can talk about that now. The Eugene Emerald's proposal to put a stadium at the Lane County Fairgrounds was denied by voters. I talked to Mayor Sean Van Gordon from Springfield, and he was saying that I was like, is this still in play for Springfield? Is it an option now for Springfield? He's like, well, the fairgrounds is dead. That's not going to happen. But it's just what his words, I won't get into exactly, but the tone of what he was saying was that it just wasn't a good proposal. I mean, what I was definitely wanting it to happen, but the more I looked at it, the money of it doesn't make sense. I mean, the Eugene Emeralds were just not bringing enough to the table. I mean, from what I was reading, they offered $10 million of prepaid rent. So they actually were offering almost nothing,
Yeah. I mean, the Elmore Sports Group that owns them compared to like where the Hillsborough Hops situation was, where they got, I think, like 42 into the 40 millions, of money from the ownership group, to build a stadium. Hats off to them. That's great that it worked out, but we didn't get that deal, even though the M's are a historic institution, 70 plus years, starting in this city. And now I would think probably Yakima, Washington is where they may go, but they'll be shopping around other cities. I know we'll at least have next year at PK Park to enjoy and look forward to, but it is definitely a dark situation. However, I did not vote for the stadium. After an election, as somebody who, conventional wisdom is, why would I share how I voted? But I, care about articulating that I did think it was too costly and too much of a use of public, resources on private business, and giving up a significantly, essential component of our county and of our city in that plot of land on the fairgrounds and the livestock farm. So, it was a very difficult situation. The Major League Baseball put everybody in by changing their standards and making it so that a beautiful stadium that we remember when PK Park was built, that thing is state of the art.
Oh yeah, it's nice.
Reasons, clubhouse reasons, schedule length reasons. There are significant reasons, but it's just too bad.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Alan Benavides is the general
baseball
manager.
In this community will continue, I'm sure.
That's true. Alan Benavides is the general manager of the M's. He's been a guest on my podcast a couple years ago. We were already talking about this issue. He's amazing. And I love what he represents, and I hope that they can get something figured out. I don't think it's completely out of left field, no pun intended, to imagine that we could keep this team in Lane County. I think it can still happen, but I think it's going to be tough. So we'll see how that plays out. But at
the current number, it's 66 no, 33 yes.
Wow. Yeah. So I mean, it was overwhelmingly no, is what the voters of Eugene wanted. I was definitely supporting it, but I have to just kind of. Full disclosure, I live in Springfield and I knew I wouldn't have to pay for it. So I was like, hey, this is tight. I'll pay my $15-20 for tickets every once in a while. I did, however, because it is coming to the wire where this could be the last ever, next year could be the last ever season. I did buy tickets to see the M's on the 4th of July. So there is that, because that is a tradition that we love, and it's something that could be going away. And you would mention baseball in Lane County continuing on. Yeah, the Springfield has the Drifters. Mm-hmm. And
Eugene Challengers, there's a number of teams,
right? And so we'll see. I mean, the future of baseball in Eugene still exists in Lane County, but it may not be with the Eugene Emeralds.
Maybe even in PK Park, there might be a summer league that will be able to play, really enjoyable, high quality baseball at PK Park eventually. You never know.
So we'll see what happens there. Let's talk about the mayor's race. Your thoughts on the mayor's race in Springfield? No, I'm kidding. The Springfield race was unopposed. Sean Van Gordon, our beloved Sean Van Gordon, will have another 4 years. In the Eugene race, it was a lot more talked about race. There was 3 or 4 candidates. I think at one point there was 4, and then Doug Barr had some health issues and some stuff from his past that came up, and he decided it was just best to drop out. I had Shanae Joy Stringer and Karin Knutson both as guests. I didn't have what's the other guy's name? Ace Dog. I did not have him on the podcast because he kind of came into the general conversation late, and I knew that it was going to be kind of a 2-way race in my opinion. So I wanted to have Karin and Shanae for sure. What were your thoughts on the mayor's race in Eugene?
Wow. I mean, so I endorsed multiple candidates in that race. Shanae inspired a lot of confidence in me, and Karin did as well. So that was an enjoyable thing to watch. 2 people that one of them was going to become the mayor. And, basically Karin consolidated such a wide swath of support, which speaks, you could look at it depending on whether you're a cynic or you're an optimist about where perhaps the establishment of Eugene city government is going. Because if you're a cynic, you could say, well, of course, Lucy announces she's not going to run on the very same event that Karin announced
which I was very critical about, and even mentioned that to Karin. I was like, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I remember you did that. If you are optimistic, I think that you're going to see a lot to appreciate about Karin's level of competence, her experience, her background, her deep roots in Eugene. And full disclosure, I became friends with her through City Club board.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a bit, so don't go
totally. But that's how I got to know her beyond kind of being asked to run. She's not somebody who really, really wanted to be the mayor, honestly.
Really?
She's somebody who, I mean, now that she's dove into it, she's going to put her all into it. But I think she had a period of time of thinking, you know, let me make sure that other voices have a chance to step in and step up and possibly be that person that people rally around. And, you know, that didn't happen so much. And so when people asked her to do it, she was willing to do it. And so
my thoughts
shout out
on
to Karen Knudsen.
Interestingly enough, by doing this podcast and by having these conversations and thinking about it throughout the week when I prep, I learned so much about what I actually want from the community, you know, from the people that are in these positions. And I'll acknowledge that I'm completely aware that I might ask questions, you know, that might counteract each other. And the whole point, there's a reason. You know, it's like when I had Karen on, I was like, just want to be full disclosure. I don't like the fact that you were appointed, anointed as the next chosen one before anyone else even knew your name. And so I asked those questions, you know, I asked that to her. And then with Shanae Joy Stringer, I asked her a couple tough ones. I asked about, you know, what do you say to the critics that you've only been here 3 years? But then also, what is it, you know, how do you feel about if you haven't been able to establish a wide-spreading network yet? And I think she has, but I meant across a lot of different areas. And I realized later the reason that those kind of counteract each other, but the reason that they're valid questions is because I want to see how people react to those kind of just thoughts, those kind of realities. And I got to be honest, Karen was incredible. The way that she responded to anything I brought up, she had shown me genuine concern or at least attention to my interests or whatever. She was very, I can't explain it other than she's extremely warm, you know. And this is not speaking specifically about Shanae. Shanae was awesome. I did it remote, and so that's not very fair that she wasn't here in person as far as a comparison. But I will say I was blown away by Karen enough to where it was like, I don't even need to keep looking for another candidate. I think she was that good. And so that's rare, you know, and I did all the interviews, but it was pretty clear to me that Eugene has made the right decision in this one. She is an awesome person, and I think she's going to do great things.
Right. She's a little younger than many people who become mayor in our town. They're often in their 60s or so, retiree age. She is in her career. She has young children. She is very much, you know, living this kind of walk of raising your kids in the community and caring deeply about the community.
Yeah, she's pretty great. So, and it is cool that I love doing this show because Sean Van Gordon, have become pretty good friends. And then Karen, you know, is always liking my stupid posts on Facebook now. And so it does make this town feel a little bit smaller, this community feel smaller.
And just to shout out the number, it was a 73.3 right now percent for Karen, 16.8 for Shanae. So pretty good.
Yeah.
16.8.
Yeah.
And 8.8 for...
Well, and Shanae has an extremely bright future in this community. And I think that all of the stuff that she got pushed back on as far as, you've only been here 3 years, she's not going to have any of those issues next time. And I love the fact that she put herself out there and got to know the community. And now next time, it's a green light because she's awesome. And they'll find a position to use her in Eugene. And it could be mayor. I mean, these are not permanent positions, you know. So shout out to Shanae Joy Stringer for running a good campaign. And I really
like her. She's both of these people, again, are people who, you know, we're also inundated with campaign messaging and ads and stuff. And so if you just experience those people through that, I would hope you try to make it to a forum, shake these people's hands, talk to them, ask them a question that isn't about politics, ask them about music or food or restaurants, things that they love about Eugene that make them inspired by the spirit of Eugene. You're going to find that there's some really badass people. I don't even think Stefan Streck, Ace Dog, is a terrible person.
No,
but you know, he doesn't really position himself in a credible way. And sometimes that irritates me because I am young and I think we should have young people that are able to present themselves in a credible way. So I think when you have somebody who runs, who's young, and just kind of makes a clown show out of it, you know,
it's tough. It's tough because we need those voices. I mean, I remember when I first met you and you were running for mayor, and I was like, I knew you as a hip hop artist. And so I'm like, is this real? And then I realized how offensive that was because now I know you and I know how thorough you take this, but you are somebody that can be a person that wears multiple hats. I mean, you could be performing a hip hop show, and then the next thing you could be elected to be the president of this Eugene City Club. And so let's talk about that. Before we talk about the City Club, I want to talk about the number one issue to you, at least the one that you were publicly the most vocal about. And that was the levy to fund 4J schools. Can you explain why this was so important to you and why education is so important to you?
Sure. These levies have been a reality of my life since I was in 4J schools, from middle school upward. I can remember being involved in strong schools campaigns. Basically, there's a state policy that makes it so that local, districts and localities and cities can, ask their voters if they want to supplement the education budget in a crucial way by passing a bond and or a local option levy. And so with this one, it was not a new tax. It was just a renewal at the same rate as before. So I think that was obviously helpful, because there are people that are so opposed to introducing new taxes. I understand there's a high tax burden. It is what it is. And this one was something that we were able to make happen. And it happened about 75 to 25. So that was pretty great. I'll pull up the final number somewhere. There's so many precinct committee people on this results document this time around. It's incredible.
A lot of people stepping up to run.
Yeah, seemingly.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah. And so that was really something that I appreciated. But it really amounted to keeping teachers in the classroom. This is an operational levy. And so it wasn't something where it's like, I want to vote no in a protest against how the buildings are, being prioritized or what's happening to North Eugene High. I mean, Eugene Gockwin and the North Eugene community is something very personal to me as a Eugene Gockwin grad. This is not the time to do that protest vote. This is about, if we don't renew this funding, we're going to be in a really serious problem as far as keeping staffing. So I'm very appreciative that the community, there were a lot of, it's the only of the three, ballot measures in Eugene that passed. The stadium and star voting did not, and this one did. And you had other similar levies around the state, in Portland that passes, and others that didn't.
I think Junction City voted against the school bond. I mean, Roseburg always does. And I like that you had mentioned that there's different reasons that money is being asked for in different times. Sometimes it's operational. Sometimes it's to pay salaries for teachers. Sometimes it's to build a brand new gym when they have a new gym that was built 5 years ago. So it's not as easy when you look from the outside to say, why doesn't Roseburg support schools? That's not fair to put it that way. I mean, they need to support schools, but that's a separate issue sometimes. I do know that recently there was one that was about a gym. And the people were like, we don't actually need a new gym. And so, that's a little bit different. I personally, when I look at schools wanting to be supported, schools, fire departments, and I hate to say it, but police, if they're asking for the money, they probably need it. And if it's police and you're not going to do the levy, then they're just going to start pulling you over all the time. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know if that's how it works.
Recoup the funding.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely fire department. There's nobody that's like, abolish the fire department. That's ridiculous. And I don't want to abolish police ever, but when I see education, policing, and fire department on the ballot for levies, usually, especially if it's to continue an old 5-year levy, there's no question that I'm going to be like, let's keep doing that. So
yeah, I mean, we just need to continually invest in. Even I was thinking about it like yesterday. I was like, having a high vocabulary is often a way to de-escalate like tension that could otherwise lead to violence. Like I literally think that what we invest in our children and as far as their ability to critically interpret the world and to express who they are and be, just given the basic tools of communicating, reading, writing, math, having an understanding of science, these things pay enormous dividends that we don't necessarily have the ability to study what they are numerically like we do in economics or, sort of in business. We can often say, this amount of money leads to this amount of money later. You can't do that with kids. You just have to make sure and connect with the schools and connect with what the students actually want and need. And you're not going to hear any of these kids say, I wish the schools had less funding for teachers.
Seriously.
So
and it's not like,
and then my role on that campaign was with communication. So particularly the letters to the editor for the weekly. Several weeks we had people submitting letters and I was kind of coordinating that. So it was really an honor because the whole school board was a part of that pack to get this passed. Yeah. And I got to work alongside them and really just very pleased and proud of our community for the school board that we have right now that we've elected.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Eugene City Club. This is a big deal. I've been friends with you now for, 4 years or something like that. And I've watched as you have gotten more and more involved in the community in many different ways. You've held different positions and different things, but I know that this one means a lot to you. So explain to me what the City Club is and how the elections work. And then, the big thing that we're getting to is that you were just chosen by your peers to be president-elect of the City Club. And that's a really awesome opportunity. And it says a lot about the tireless work that you put in for the community. So explain to the audience listening, if they've never heard of it, what is the Eugene City Club?
Sure. Thank you so much. There is probably a bit of a generational divide often on this. I'm probably the youngest president-elect, but probably the current president may have been the youngest before me. So Andrew Kallick, shout out to him. We had him in our candidate forum in 2022.
Yeah.
That was a ton of fun.
He ran for
Congress.
For Congress, yeah.
And he's a really talented, lovely guy. And he is going to continue as president for another whole year. My role gets to be kind of a 3-year commitment, where the first year you're the president-elect on the board, which is kind of an executive role. And then for 1 year being the president, getting to kind of run the forums, which for those who hadn't heard me say it yet, because I haven't yet, the City Club basically provides forums and tries to provide community vision through open inquiry. That's our goal. We do often, you'll see us around election times being a leader in providing candidate forums. Often, like how people find out about us is a quote in the Weekly of the Register Guard that says, in a forum by the City Club of Eugene, candidate X said, we really kind of get these people on the record, and we provide an important forum for people to engage with what's really going on. We have Q&A at almost all of our forums. People can come and ask a question. cityclubeugene.org. Please check it out for more information.
And follow on YouTube for sure.
Yeah. And the podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, if somebody is new to politics, especially on the local level, they think that politics are like this big back room kind of thing where everybody's just planning their way of controlling things. And that's not what this is. This is an opportunity to give. It's a think tank, sure, but it's a way to give people in the community a bigger voice. That's the point,
Right.
So,
and often you'll find that it's like, oh, we understand we want to be inclusive and diverse and multicultural. So we will often apply, this lens of scrutiny and say, this group, is not sufficiently diverse. I think that's great to understand and recognize that and try to work towards, improving that. That's something I'm trying to do with the Wow Hall. I'm trying to do with City Club. But I just also really very much value the people that have been showing up to our forums all the time, kind of alluding to it. It tends to be a slightly more elder demographic. I'm so appreciative of the wisdom that I can learn from those folks. I'm trying to bring more people around our age into the room, and I think we're getting there. So,
and that's why
you're asking me about it right here on the show. So
that's why I do what I do, because my whole style is supposed to be a little bit less buttoned up, and a little bit more fun and kind of, I'm a punk rock kid growing up, so I'm a barber. I mean, I do it my style because that's going to reach a different audience as well. But I can't tell you that I haven't watched the Eugene City Club forums at length and learned a ton from the style and the way that they do things. Like you had mentioned before, we had hosted a candidate forum for some of the smaller candidates that was called the Grassroots Candidate Forum back in the 2022 Congress race.
Primary,
Congress primary. We had 5 of the candidates that we kind of thought weren't getting a lot of exposure. And so we
invited them all.
Yeah, and everybody was invited. But the smaller ones did take us up on it because they were like, what a great opportunity. And you had showcased, I was scared to death because I had never done anything like that. You had showcased your comfort level and your ability to organize and put together something like that. And so I think that this is a natural progression into the Eugene City Club to be running those meetings, or to be having your hand at helping running those meetings. It's going to be awesome. And I think that, you do a thorough job. So I think you're going to do great.
Thank you. And it's not just politics. They have a forum on peace health, a forum on emeralds, a lot of whole different, wide variety of things. So really just glad to be a part of it, for real. It's a huge honor. And I'm really I look at the list of past presidents. I'm like, I'm the imposter here,
Sure.
But
and that's good, because you should be you should be surrounded by really great people. And that's when you're doing something right. Like you had said, Andrew Kallick, Karen Knutson, the new mayor. She's a former president. Eric Richardson.
Kitty Kiersey.
I mean, that is the
City
cream of the crop.
Council member Alan Zelenka, a bunch of wonderful. Joel Corrin.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So another impact felt by the hospital closure is the Peace Health becoming a smaller part of the community. The City Club also lost them as a sponsor. I know you probably can't talk about it too much, but you had told me that they're a big part of the funding for the City Club. Can you speak on how this impacts the club?
Sometimes we get put in like a sink or swim situation as people, right? And I think that, broadly speaking, when you and I became friends 4 years ago, I really wanted to deepen my leadership in the community and my commitment to the community. And, I feel like, honestly, the last few years being involved in nonprofits, which is such a big part of leadership in Eugene. And also we have an outsized number of nonprofits. We have, and some people kind of deride it, but because they're not businesses or something. I don't know. I think it's great that we have so many opportunities to be involved in nonprofits. Nonprofits have to have a board. They have to have, typically a bylaws that have a certain number of people on the board. I'm telling you that it's a hard time to be in nonprofits right now. Honestly, I think people are having a hard time, continuing to fundraise at the levels they've been able to prior, continuing to get leadership and volunteer engagement on the ground. And, it's very difficult, but those opportunities, I say this to say, if you're listening to this podcast, reach out to me, Patrick. There's ways to get you so plugged in. And I'm optimistic about how we can, obviously we need to bring, a more and a wider demographic while retaining those people that already care about what we do, to make sure that we can say, hey, can you commit to continuing to keep the City Club going? We have great partners. KLCC is an amazing partner to us. We do our forums at Friday at noon, typically right now in the Maple Room at the Inn at the Fifth, but we are going to be getting a new venue. We're going to figure out exactly what that new venue is. But KLCC broadcasts our forums every Monday night, just like 3 days after they happen at 7 p.m. That's where we get thousands of people listening. And that's really something that we treasure. So all those kind of organizations we've been able to partner with or be involved with, collaborate with, we need local information in this community.
Yeah.
We need that landscape to not just be, smears and trolls and misinformation and, frankly, journalists who sometimes aren't very deeply understanding of the community. Maybe that's a little more in TV journalism.
Well, and I'm not a journalist, but that is what I'm a podcaster. My goal is to spark interest so that people can go watch the city clubs and those kind of things and listen to that kind of stuff, because I'm just a dude having conversations. But I think it's worth doing because I definitely have networked and met a lot of people in the community that are doing stuff. And I've learned so incredibly much in the last 6 years that's why I keep doing this,
Look at that number, 217.
Yeah, 217 episodes.
That is a commitment that you have made. That's incredible.
So, and sometimes we just shoot the shit, but that's what I love. So, okay, well, there's a little bit of a recap. What are your predictions for the general election? I don't know locally. I think that now, obviously, Karin is now the mayor. This is why you have to vote in the primaries, is because in Eugene, if it's on the May ballot and someone gets over 51%, it's over. So she's now going to be the mayor.
Eliza Kaczynski lost to the incumbent in 2020. She kept at it. She stuck with it. She continued to be involved on Eugene Budget Committee, Lane County Planning Commission. She's a wonderful person. She's going to be the Ward 1 counselor now. None of these races are contested in the general, but we will have contestation between partisan races, like for state offices, where the Democrats and the Republicans will have at it with one another. Val Hoyle versus Monique Despain. Tobias Reed won the Secretary of State nomination. I really wish that James Manning, in a world where he didn't have to go up against so much money, he would have been able to make a more robust case, but he did great still.
James Manning
he's a great state senator.
Was that Attorney General? Is that
no,
right?
Secretary
of State. Yeah. That Tobias Reed and James Manning, that was a really tough primary.
I like Tobias.
Tobias is good, but James Manning is better. James Manning is,
and also the Eugene representation, up there.
Well,
in the
and
state,
somebody that
we don't get a lot of that.
He's been avidly pushing for universal health care, and that's something that that's my number one issue most likely. If I had to choose what I think could make immediate impact for so many people having access to healthcare coverage, so.
And I think, this is a little broad and kind of philosophical and hokey, but universal healthcare coverage as a policy means everybody has a chance of being healthy. Yeah. What I think it also needs to be coupled with spiritually and communally is we have to look at the people around us as being and deserving of health.
Yeah.
Just like we are.
Yeah.
And if we can couple those two things, get the policy right and get this culture of hatred and divisiveness, I understand that, you have an audience. Sometimes I have an audience of people that are right-leaning that might have voted for Trump. We probably alienated them at some point in this show, but thank you for being a right-leaning person in Eugene. You probably have to endure a lot of that.
Yeah. And I will say that a lot of times the concern that someone might have with the government healthcare, for example, on the right, or anybody that has criticisms of it, their concern is not that they want to see people not have health coverage. Their concern is they don't want to waste money on administrative costs. And so, something needs to be done to make sure that that's the case. because we don't want
Bernie's great at making the point about how much we do pay and without universal health care.
And exactly
paying more than any other country in the world per capita.
Those narratives,
system where the private industry, frankly, is incentivized to pull as much as they can. The pharmaceutical industry is incentivized to profit as much as they can. It's a tough world if you're trying to be healthy in today's landscape.
Absolutely. And mental and dental, I've talked about that since the beginning. We need mental health coverage and we need dental coverage for everybody because it could be game changing for everybody.
My brain needs my teeth need root canal. No, I was gonna make a dumb joke. Here's the joke. My brain needs a root canal and my teeth needs brain surgery.
That's true. That's it. That one definitely missed. Okay, so we're gonna get out of here, but before we do, I want to talk basketball. This isn't local, but I don't care. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm two things: extremely Irish and a huge Boston Celtics fan. They are in the NBA Finals for the 342nd time, which is really exciting. Not really, but I think probably the 30th time, something like that. But seeking to win championship number 18. I think they got their 17th already. Yeah, 18. They're going to be playing against the Dallas Mavericks, which have a lot of star power. Luka Doncic, former Celtic Kyrie Irving, which is going to be enemy number one in Boston. I looked at tickets. No, I'm not going to do it. It's way too expensive. I thought about it for a minute. I have a friend, Danny. Shout out to Danny Martin that lives in Boston. And I could go out there, but it's $1,300 a ticket for balcony seats.
And you wouldn't even consider going to Dallas, even though it's a little closer?
No, I'd have to be in Boston. It would if I was going to go. I would want to be around the crowd. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could go to Dallas. I didn't.
You could find your Celtics fans in Dallas, I'm sure. But
yeah, the Celtics travel well no matter what. But they definitely would for the finals. This is a big deal.
I haven't been watching enough men's basketball.
I was going to ask
to really have a huge horse in the race. But I do think Luka is an incredible talent, and I'd like to see him get a ring. So this could be a win-win because, the Celtics, I totally appreciate and respect the dominance, the legacy, the players. There's a lot of really stand-up guys on that team, and they had the best record of the year, so that's cool.
I mean, I think that Jaylen Brown off the court may be one of the people that does the most to help the marginalized community. So Jaylen Brown is somebody that's an amazing person. He's a Celtic, but I agree with you about Luka. And Kyrie is complicated and controversial, but at the end of the day, I'm a fan overall as a basketball player and as a human being. I think he's a good person.
Nice.
So I mean, I'm a big. Everyone always asks me about do you hate this team? And I'm like, not in basketball. The NBA is a family. It's a big family, and that's why I love it, because not only is it a big family of a lot of different types of people and styles of play, but it's also very diverse.
Right.
And ideologically, as far as the types of people across the globe, I mean, it's a global game more than any other sport other than maybe soccer. And we're the only people in the world that call it soccer. But still, I'm a huge NBA fan. My prediction is that the Celtics are going to win in 6. I do think that the Celtics have had enough experience to get to this point, and they made some huge offseason moves to pick up Porzingis, who hasn't played all playoff. Yes, they've had an easy run to get to this, so everyone's gonna be like, they haven't been tested. You cannot tell me that this Boston Celtics team has not been tested. They have been knocking at the door for 5 years, so this is gonna be super exciting. You mentioned about
I won't tell you that because I don't have any substantive knowledge to back up.
I just made that up anyway, but I mean, a prediction is literally just a guess. But have you
Mavs in 7?
Oh, in 9. Okay. Have you you said you had been watching the WNBA. I do want to talk about this. This has been really cool to see. Yes, there's going to be haters and all that stuff. If you read the comment section of a women's basketball story, it allows you to see men that have absolutely zero sense of pride. And basically, men that are so fragile themselves that they have to attack women. Or whatever the cause is, because personally, I haven't personally been watching a ton of WNBA. I'm going to be honest. But that being said, I'm here for it. I love it. I love the fact that not everything has to be for me either. So I do watch a lot of NBA, and that kind of takes up too much of my time. I do watch highlights about the WNBA, and I will watch playoffs. But yeah, you had mentioned you've been paying attention to that. What's your favorite part of what's happening there?
Well, I do think that the incoming class of rookies has, I didn't actually realize how much of a quick turnaround it is, especially if you were in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
You play your whole college season and then you have to go straight to the WNBA and play a few weeks later with your regular season. So shout out to those women. Cameron Brink, Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark.
Obviously, Caitlin Clark.
So many people. The other woman on the sky, I'm blanking on her name right now.
There's a lot of talent. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Sabrina's only been in the league for a couple years. Sabrina Ionescu, from the University of Oregon. There's a bunch of Ducks in the pros.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things too, with some people, it's like there used to be able to be an argument. It's still passed around. It's a dumb argument. It's like, oh, any guy could beat, the women. I could beat the women. It's like, dude, basketball is so objectively evident if you can make a 3-pointer or not. Like Caitlin Clark, Sabrina, they shoot the ball. It goes in from 25 feet out. You can't tell me, first of all, that you could have done that under the spotlight, under the the minutes of a game, and you're sweating and hustling out there, and there's a crowd watching you. Like, I'm sorry, but random YouTube commenters, you're kind of getting shown up right now. These women are out here balling. I will say that, I think there is a good amount of solidarity and appreciation, but there's also some perhaps veteran players in the league that are kind of like, we've been out here, so. We're also trying to prove ourselves, and I think that it gets physical, and I think that there's legitimate basketball plays that are physical and hard and tough. You set a screen, whatever, you block a shot, but there's also times when the clock isn't running and somebody just coming in and busting in on Caitlin Clark and calling her a B word. It's like, that should be a technical foul.
It should be a foul, but that camaraderie and that competitive nature is what pushes a great game. So yes, you hold accountability, like we had talked about at the beginning of this. We want equal accountability for everybody, but I'm here for it because that energy means that people are playing with passion. So it's just like when you're in football, if in the first week of training camp, if the offensive line and the defensive line get in a fight, your own team, their coach is like, we're going to have a good season, because we have people with passion. So that's
the
awesome.
Other Sky player that I really admire, Camila Cardoso.
Yeah. No, and I mean, women's basketball is blowing up. The thing that I think is the most incredible is that you see young girls across the globe, not just in America, but young girls that are now seeing it like, this is something that I could pursue. And that to me is amazing, because team sports and what you can get from team sports is amazing. It teaches you teamwork. I mean, obviously, but it teaches you how to sometimes have to sacrifice and how not to be on the spotlight, because let's be honest, even in basketball, you can be the best player on the team, but you cannot win anything alone, period. And so, I'm going to leave it on that. We can't win anything alone. So, Thomas Hiura, I know that our friend Karen, my friend, someone that you clearly admire a lot, you probably would call her a friend. I think she'd call you a friend. I think so. Yeah.
She doesn't want to do it alone either. So I really, there's at times I'm like, am I really out here? Like 4 years ago, I was the insurgent candidate, and now I'm back in the big candidate. But, it comes down to people and whether they really kind of, again, I saw 2 candidates that I thought really deserved to be in that mayoral race conversation, and I really just admire what they brought forward. So you said doing it together. I would love to see them unify. I would love to see public showings of solidarity and support across people that had a primary against each other. That's what our system can benefit
That's the
from.
whole thing. Yeah. And it's funny. We could be here for days. But yeah. Thomas Hiura, thank you so much.
Thank you.